The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. It is May 4th, 2026, and we are going to once again look at the situation in Ukraine, and today's video will be the last one before the fighting season kicks off, which will mean the return of territorial changes being more frequent, and also we can expect casualties to skyrocket on both sides. Ukrainians are trying to wreck the Russian offensive's potential by striking at civilian facilities within the entirety of European or Western Russia, but I honestly feel like it will do little to stop them, as the Russians are preparing for their bigger push into the Sumy and Kharkiv regions this summer. And you could argue that summer for the Russians is like May or something like that. But yeah, today's video is going to be shorter than usual, and hopefully you all understand that, because there's not really a lot to talk about. So, with that all being said, let's get right into it. First of all, Zaporizhzhia direction. The Russians, let's just say, got their asses kicked. The Dnieper group has lost majority control over the town of Primorske, and have also been ousted from half of Stepnogorsk. In addition, Lukyanivsky is back under Ukrainian control too, along with Novo Yakovlivka. And Pavlivka is also probably going to fall back to the Ukrainians as well. So, yeah, Dnieper group here choked, and they're probably going to need Vostok group to bail them out in the coming future, because, as all of you know, Vostok Group is trying to advance towards Omanek, which is the northern crossroad village that goes to the strategic town of Orikhiv or Orikov. And should they be able to cut this supply route here from the north, they'll be able to attack Orikov like much more easily. Like, it'll be easier for Dnieper Group especially to take Orikov. Though I think it's still going to need at least a couple more months or so before that happens. But as I said, fighting season is almost here, and I do believe that in spite of the Russians' issues with FPV drones and Ukrainian manpower being deployed to this area, like the superior manpower that is when compared to other parts of eastern Ukraine, I do believe they'll be able to pull through at the end of the day, because that's what the Russians always seem to do, in spite of their issues. Like, they're very persistent. Like, they refuse to quit. So yeah, otherwise though, not much has really changed in this direction, so we can pretty much forget about it, other than the fact that most, if not all, of Ternovate is back under Russian control. And also, in addition, we don't have any words whatsoever on the fate of the very southern edges of Dnipropetrovsk region. Oleksandrohad is contested, same with Voskresenka still. And then we got an interesting situation going on in Novopavlivka, which is in the Dnipropetrovsk region. So Suryak has decided to paint most, so around like 60 or so % of the village under Russian control. Now, Lost Armor has around most of this area, except for the very north of Novopavlivka, under Ukrainian control. And it wouldn't surprise me if sometime in May or June at the latest that the Russians will finally take full control of Novopavlivka and finally make an advance towards the strategic town of Mazova, which goes from the city of Pokrovsk. And if Mazova were to be taken, then the Russians will establish themselves quite well in the region of Dnipropetrovsk. But also, we can pretty much forget about Ukrainians ever trying to retake all of the Dnipropetrovsk region back, because, I mean, they really tried really hard, and they came really close to ousting them from here. But if they take Novopavlivka, then the Russians are never leaving the Dnieper region. It's going to become impossible for them to do that. So, Yeah, so the Lost Armor has most of this area here under Russian control, and this area here is still under Ukrainian control, at least according to Lost Armor, but Syriac, though, is a little more generous to the Ukrainians and has basically all of the western part of Novopavlivka under Ukrainian control. And for that reason, and knowing how reliable Syriac is, I think I'm going to side with him on this matter. Though my map, to be quite honest, is a little more generous to the Russians. Anatoly Radov reported just earlier, before making this video, that Novoalexandrivka is under Russian control. So keep that in mind going into tomorrow when Syriac updates the map. But I do believe it is under Russian control now, though I don't really think it's that important of a capture. I think in order for the Russians to make noise here in the MYROPILLYA direction, at least in the southern flank of it, that is, they have to take all these villages here, basically going all the way up to the border with Dnipropetrovsk, and also taking, of course, the village of Sergivka, which is on the border with Dnipropetrovsk region as well. Bieletsky is still contested, and for some reason, the Ukrainians are still trying to take back control of Rudensky. I don't know why they keep bothering it with it. Maybe they're trying to delay the inevitable with Bieletsky. I mean, it's really stupid, but they cannot afford to lose Bieletsky, because if they do, then MYROPILLYA is basically cooked. And then, going to the Konstantinovka direction, Syriac has now finally painted Dova Balka, at least a good chunk of it under Russian control, and according to geolocations provided by Creamy Caprice and other pro-Russian sources, it appears that the Russians do have control of basically the entire eastern half of Dova Balka. Though, keep in mind, most of the population lives on the western side. And then going into Konstantinovka itself, it's kind of a mess right now with all the mappers, but apparently the Russians have cemented control over half, if not most, of the commie blocks here in southern or central Konstantinovka. And they have also broken into the suburban areas too, like on the far western side of the city. But other than that, not a lot going on, though I'm sure that's going to change very soon. The Russians have also continued their advance towards the Donbas Canal in the northern direction. And keep an eye on this area going into most of this month, and especially June, because that will be key for any push on Slavyansk and the Kramatorsk. And also, the Russians have taken control over a big chunk of Kryva Luka, along with more fields to the south. Also, Ukrainians have went on a successful counterattack, pushing the Russians back from multiple villages, though they do have a problem, though, that may be growing. Apparently, the Russians have broken into Svyatogorsk from the east and have been geolocated in the town of, or village of, Tenyanivka. Should the Russians be able to take control over this, then this historical site, which is the Svyatohersk monastery, will come under threat of being taken back by Russia. They did control this back in 2022 before the Ukrainians recaptured it in their infamous counteroffensive, but it is very probable that within the next few months or so, it will be back under Russian control, along with the entirety of Svyatogorsk. Nothing much from the city of Liman, so we can sort of forget about that. And then going further to the north, Ukrainians are continuing to lose more and more ground within the, area of Kupiansk. They apparently have lost these commie blocks here. I think I already talked about this in the previous video. But, yeah, the Russians appear to have control over that. And we also got reports that the Russians are very much still in the main city of Kupiansk, like in the western side, that is. And because of the problems lingering on the border, like further up north, which I'll get to in a moment, it is likely that there won't be enough Ukrainians to keep control over Kupiansk. So they'll have to abandon it, which, of course, would be a huge disaster for the AFU. And speaking of those bordering areas, not much has really changed other than the village of Poka Liane is now under Russian control. So, yeah, what started in Volchansk, like in this area here, is now expanding. And the goal is to reach this area here, which I'm sure they're going to be able to do that in June. So yeah, but not much, though, has changed since the last video I made. Though, again, like every other direction, well, especially Slavyansk-Kramatorsk direction, and also maybe the Pokrovsk, Dnipropetrovsk direction, I keep an eye on this going into summer. Now, finally, the Sumy area. The Russians appear to be doing quite well, though we have conflicting reports regarding a certain settlement, and that is MYROPILLYA. So the group of forces north have claimed full control over this settlement here. It's quite a big village. But the problem, though, is we don't have enough proof to 100% confirm that MYROPILLYA is under Russian control. In fact, earlier today, the Ukrainians provided some geolocations proving, I quote, that they still controlled the whole area. But some people, however, are disputing it. They claim that the Ukrainians are bullshitting and that the video is doctored, if not old archived footage, that they're using in order to calm the public down about the situation in Sumy. And knowing the Ukrainian intelligence services, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did pull that shit off. And if they were able to, well, good for them. They were able to trick a lot of people once again. Suckers. So yeah, MYROPILLYA is currently contested, at least for now, though I won't be surprised if it completely falls to Russia very soon. Definitely during the fighting season in Ukraine, that is. Now, one last thing before I go. There's a geolocation suggesting that the Russians have entered and have taken over half of the village of Ryazny, which is in the direction of Krasnopilya, or Krasnopole. Control over this settlement here will mean that they will have access to a road that goes between the city of Kharkiv and also the city of Sumy. So they want to take this road here, and I do think they're going to be able to do that in a month, if not weeks. I don't think the Ukrainians' defenses here in Sumy region are good, at least as it used to be, and because of that, I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on for much longer in this direction. I mean, not just due to the quality of the troops here, but also due to the fact that there's not enough of them available in order to slow down the Russian advances completely. Oh, and I forgot. There is one more place to discuss within Sumy region, and that is, of course, the main Sumy direction from the north. So the group of forces north claim that they control Korchak-Kivka. Sorry if I slipped my tongue a little bit, but they have claimed control over this. And if it were to be true, well, guess what? The Ukrainians in the city of Sumy are in trouble, though not in double trouble yet. But they will probably be in said trouble, especially if the Russians take the town of Khotin. Because if they take Khotin, then of course, you have this road here, which goes directly into the city of Sumy and its suburbs. And as you guys all know, it will put the Russians within conventional artillery firing range for them to fire upon the city, and in turn it will make Sumy uninhabitable for any everyday people. It will essentially become a ghost city like Konstantinivka, for instance. And that's going to do it for today's video. So I hoped all of you found it informative, somewhat entertaining, and etc. So I guess I'll see you guys this Saturday when I cover the V-Day parade in Moscow. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. So take good care of yourselves and peace out. Bye-bye.